Hey everyone, I'm back with another video. Today I'm doing something a little different. I'm taking a break from House of the Dragon to discuss the fall of what was once one of television's most successful series, The Walking Dead. At its peak, The Walking Dead averaged over 13 million viewers per episode, but since then, it's lost over 90% of its audience as the show limps towards its series finale. Well, they call it a finale, but it's really not one. Because to see the conclusion of the overall story, you're going to have to watch three separate spin offs. But we'll get to all of that a bit later. So, what's the biggest reason for such a precipitous drop? The person most to blame is the former showrunner of The Walking Dead and currently the chief content officer of the franchise, Scott Gimple. He captained AMC's flagship series and steamed ahead into infamy. The Titanic took a little over 2.5 hours to sink. For Gimple, it was about 2.5 seasons of foolish decisions, poor writing, and a lack of understanding of what the show was all about. At its core, The Walking Dead was a story about a father and a son surviving in the apocalypse. That's what Robert Kirkman's graphic novels were all about. Our final image in the comics is of an older Carl with his daughter. And that's why Gimple's inexplicable and inexcusable decision to kill off Carl in the TV series tore the heart out of the show. He claims he did it because he needed to give Rick a reason to keep Negan alive. But the source material provided all of that for him. Rick kept Negan alive in the comics, and Carl didn't have to die. Now, I know the audience decline began before Carl's death, and I'm going to get into the bad decisions that caused all of that in a bit, but I had to put the death of Carl first because I think it did the most irreparable damage to the show. It just destroyed its essence. Now, this is some conjecture on my part, but I believe that Carl's death on the show enabled Andrew Lincoln to more easily cut the cord with The Walking Dead. Yes, Andrew Lincoln is from the UK, and he had been filming in America for nearly a decade. He wanted to spend more time with his family, but in many ways, Rick's real story wrapped up with the death of Carl. And at that point, too, the show had no endpoint in mind. So it was easier for him to leave The Walking Dead at that point. In the comics, Rick took on the scaled down role in the later issues. This could have easily been worked into the story if they hadn't killed off Carl, and perhaps Andrew Lincoln might have still returned for a few episodes each season. I mean, he is coming back for a spinoff. And that brings us to another problem, which was that there was no planned conclusion of the main part of the story. If they had one in mind, they could have worked around a lot of other problems. When you don't have a destination, the story becomes meandering, and old conflicts are just continually recycled. And in some cases, they even had characters continue to flip back and forth between philosophies. At one moment, Morgan was a stone cold killer. Then he became a pacifist. Then he flipped back and forth again. It just didn't make any sense. Breaking Bad is the perfect example of a show that knew its destination, and everything they did led them to that point. AMC asked Vince Gilligan to do more seasons, but he refused. He just wanted to tell the story and not drag things out, like we've seen on The Walking Dead. Another big problem was that the entrance of Negan onto the show wasn't as well received by the audience as they had expected. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is a very good actor, but the material he was given during the first couple of seasons was cheesy, over the top at times, and unbelievable. He just swaggered around like a post apocalypse Fonzie. Gimple, who was the showrunner at the time, is to blame, because since Angela Kang has taken over direct control of the show, Negan has become a more complex, balanced, and interesting character, one that the few fans left actually enjoy now. Negan's entrance onto the show, though, is when a lot of fans began to leave, but it wasn't just the way the character was written, but also due to the dark Season 7 premiere, where two fan favorites, Glenn and Abraham, were both brutally killed. In the comics, only Glenn died when Negan forced everyone to kneel down in front of him. But even two key character deaths wasn't enough for them. They had Negan torturously driving Rick around in an RV and making him fight his way back to it through walkers. And then Negan almost made him cut off Carl's hand. And finally, they took Daryl captive at the end of the episode. It was just an unappealing, overly indulgent, dark episode that alienated a lot of the audience. And then this cumbersome storyline took 2 full seasons to resolve. They dragged it out much too far. And that whole period that also included the death of Carl cost them 60% of their audience. The other 30% gradually drifted away over the course of the past 3 seasons. Then there were the mind-numbing bottle episodes. They would start a season and only focus on a few characters in each episode, then bring most of them together in the last 1 or 2 of each half season. And when you don't see characters for weeks, the audience loses interest in them, and the narrative becomes weak and unfocused. Bottle episodes should only be used rarely, and they should be saved for something unique or big, like on Game of Thrones when they would have a large-scale battle. But when you implement this technique season after season, you're taking your audience out of the story. What Scott Gimple did here, I feel, is a blueprint on how any showrunner or network should not handle a TV series. And notice, I didn't even include here much of the bad writing, which there was a lot of. Gimple did huge things wrong. He forgot what the show was all about and killed off a critical character who was central to the story. They had no plan on how to end the series and dragged things out too long, like the original Negan story arc. And then there were the brutal bottle episodes. And now, after this whole mess, they won't even give the fans a proper ending in the finale. They're planning not 1 spin-off for the show, but 3 to complete the story. There's the main one with Rick and Michonne. Maggie and Negan will be traveling to New York for whatever reason. And the real double jump the shark moment is Daryl in France. That's right, he's going to land in another continent during the zombie apocalypse. Maybe Drogon, who flew off in the terrible Game of Thrones finale, will take Daryl to Paris. I hope those people who are still watching The Walking Dead get some sort of enjoyment out of the final episode and there's some closure for them, but it looks unlikely. Scott Gimple destroyed any chance of even a mediocre ending a long time ago. It's an insult to the fan base to make people watch 3 spin-offs to see the end of a story that started 12 years ago. And it's hard to ruin a series in nearly every way possible, but Gimple managed to do that. Anyway, that's it for this one. I'll be back with another House of the Dragon video on Sunday. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. And as always, listen to Caraxes and subscribe. I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you soon.